The Blue Jays have returned serve, and the ALCS is now knotted up at 2 games apiece. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, October 16th, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. And as always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, we have a Patreon called Control the Zone where we talk Mariners, Seahawks, all that good stuff. For more information, go to patreon.com/Control the Zone. Link in the description. Mariners fall in Game 4 of the ALCS. This series is now tied up at 2 games apiece. The home team still hasn't won a game in this series. Hopefully that changes tomorrow as the Mariners will look to get back on top before heading back to Toronto. We'll talk about how this game followed a very similar script to last night's game, all the mistakes and missed opportunities by the Mariners, and look to what's ahead. I'm fighting through a cold right now, which is why you didn't get a show last night. I felt a bit better earlier today, but it's starting to get bad again today. So yeah, if I feel or if I sound congested, that's why. Anyway, obviously the baseball isn't helping me feel any better either. So yeah, I'm not having a great time right now, folks. I'm not. So yeah, the third inning crushes the Mariners again, on top of a lot of other things, but it all starts with the third inning. I mean, this game pretty much following the same script as last night. Didn't get as out of hand tonight as it did last night, but pretty darn close. It all starts with a leadoff double from the Jays 8-hole hitter in the top of the third, and then that gets immediately followed up by a 2-run home run off the bat of Andres Gimenez. Same exact thing that happened last night. Mariners get an early home run, they get an early lead, and then that happens, and then the Blue Jays play add-on, and the Mariners can't do really much of anything offensively as they continue a pretty rough postseason run offensively at T-Mobile Park. So the Mariners lose 8-2 tonight. And again, we'll talk about all the sloppy play and the missed opportunities, but it really just starts with the fact that you got out executed in pretty much every way possible tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you let Max Scherzer go 5 2/3 or whatever, get you the corpse of Max Scherzer, really just dominate you. And it wasn't like his stuff was incredible. He was in the middle of the plate at times. And then you just, when you fell behind 0-2 because you weren't crushing the pitches in the middle, they expanded. So really it's 2 nights in a row with very few quality at bats in this game. And the Blue Jays are a team that takes quality at bats basically every single time they go up there. They don't give away outs. The way you kind of counteract that, or the way the Mariners counteract that, and the way that most teams try to counteract that is by hitting home runs. Well, the Blue Jays have out-homered you the last 2 games as well. So they've taken that club out of your bag. And I said this back in the ALDS, that if the Blue Jays and the Brewers are going to start hitting tanks, they're going to be very difficult to beat, because that was kind of one of their only flaws for a postseason team. And the Blue Jays have absolutely destroyed the Yankees, and the last 2 games they've destroyed you, thanks in no small part to the home run ball. So it is what it is. There was absolutely sloppy play on the Mariners' part tonight, but any way you want to slice it, the Blue Jays have just been significantly better than you the last 2 nights, just as you were significantly better than them the previous 2 nights. So, it sucks. You've lost home field advantage now, and you're going to have to win at least 1 game in Toronto, maybe 2 to advance. But that's what happens. You got destroyed. I mean, you really have no right to complain. You had everything you needed in front of you, and you laid an egg in back-to-back nights and top to bottom. So I can't say I'm too surprised that Toronto has come back to win these two games. I am quite a bit surprised by how lifeless the Mariners have played, particularly at the plate. But boy, we talk a lot about teams struggling to hit at T-Mobile Park. The Blue Jays do not, especially this year.
They have 29 hits in the last two games.
Yeah.
They've hit all the home runs that you talked about. They've scored 21 runs in these two games.
It's not counting what they did back in the regular season as well, where they crushed at this ballpark. So the Blue Jays have figured out a way to hit Mariners pitching in T-Mobile Park.
So the Blue Jays, they're 5-0 at T-Mobile Park this year. The Mariners are 4-1 at Rogers Center. Both of those teams go 5-1 at each other's ballparks. Hey, the Mariners go to the World Series. So that's one way to look at it. But yeah, we're seeing why this is, or why this was ultimately a coin flip series for me. You're seeing both of these teams throwing haymakers at one another, not really in particularly the same game as one another, but definitely throughout the series.
Yeah.
Again, the Mariners dominated offensively. They got into double-digit territory in the second game at Rogers Center. Now, the Blue Jays get into double-digit territory yesterday. They nearly do so again tonight. And once again, the team that had on paper the pitching disadvantage won. So nothing about the series, like when you just look at the specific matchups on paper, nothing about the series has really made a whole lot of sense, other than the fact that the Mariners have been really good at Rogers Center and the Blue Jays have been really good at T-Mobile Park.
Also, the team that has hit more home runs has won every game.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, like, we talked about this leading up to the series. The Blue Jays were the worst matchup for the Mariners in the American League bracket for this particular reason, because the Mariners pitching does not line up well with this Jays offense. It doesn't. Like, the Jays expose everything that the Mariners do wrong as a pitching staff, and over these two games, we've seen that get exploited. So, yeah, I mean, did we expect it to be easy? Absolutely not. It's the Mariners, right? They didn't make the Tigers series easy. Why would they make this series easy?
Didn't have to be this ugly, though.
No, it didn't. But, we're here now, and the only thing to do now is move forward. We'll talk about that a little later on, but just want to talk more about, some of the sloppy plays, some of the mistakes, some of the missed opportunities, why things got as ugly as it did tonight. Also talk a little bit about Luis Castillo in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. For instant reactions following every Mariners playoff game, be sure to tune in to the Mariners postcast with Anderson Hurst and Christopher Crawford, available on both the Locked On Mariners YouTube and podcast feeds. So, some sloppy play from the Mariners tonight. Some missed opportunities. I wouldn't say that that's the only reason that they lost this game. I really think that this is kind of a matter of just like tipping your cap to the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays just straight up out executed you tonight. But you definitely, helped them out in some ways as well. Leo Rivas getting picked off with Cal Raleigh up to bat. Josh Naylor trying to leg it out to third and getting thrown out to end the inning. In a situation where, like, him getting to third does not matter at all. You just need to continue to string hits together. So yeah, that killed any sort of momentum that the Mariners were potentially building there, because that made it 5-2 on Gino's RBI.
Coming to the plate.
Yeah, exactly. But then, Vladdy hits the home run pretty much immediately after, and there you go. That pretty much ended it. So there's that. And then there's also the third inning again. Just going back to that, same script pretty much plays out. 8-hole hitter for the Blue Jays leads things off with a double. This time it's Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Last night it was Ernie Clement. And then Andres Gimenez, one of the worst hitters in baseball this year, hits another 2-run home run. This time, given the Blue Jays a 1-run lead. So I want to talk about Luis Castillo. What did you think about Castillo's night and then the decision to take him out?
Yeah, it started off pretty well. I mean, Springer rocketed a ball. I don't know what the exit velo was on it, but it looked like a double off the bat.
I think it was 104.5.
Yeah, thankfully, Randy was well positioned. But yeah, for the most part, I thought he was okay. And then in the third inning, everything is just in the middle of the plate, and I don't mean like middle, but like pitch at the knees, it's still in the middle of the plate. Pitch at the shoulders, it's still in the middle of the plate. Nothing on the corners, nothing in those, up, down, left, right quadrants, everything in the middle quadrants of the plate. And the Blue Jays aren't going to miss those pitches, and we know Luis doesn't have swing and miss stuff anymore. And even if he did, the Blue Jays don't swing and miss that much. So it was just bad control, bad command in that third. And it is yet again 3 starters in a row now that have failed to give the Mariners more than 9 outs. And you do that 3 times in a row. I don't really care how good your bullpen is. You're going to get exposed, because even if these guys throw well, like they did in game 2, that's still more information the hitters in the box get from, seeing these guys over and over and over again. So we know that, just look at the Tigers series. The more they saw Bizzardo, the more they saw Spire, the better they looked against him, minus game 5. So, it is a continuation of a problem. That being said, I don't really know what Dan's supposed to do with Castillo. There's only 1 out. The bases are loaded. And he's struggled, and he's throwing a ton of pitches in this inning, and everything's kind of in the middle of the plate. So you leave him in there to face Varsho, and Varsho hits a home run, like the game's over in the second, whereas you take him out and, Spire gives up a run, but manages to keep it at that. You're still in the game, even though it felt like you kind of weren't. So I don't really know what Dan's supposed to do. It's a tough spot when back-to-back starters give you 9 outs and Kirby give you 7, 8. So like you're just kind of in a no-win situation there. Yeah, I thought maybe might have been a good time, go to Spire, get the last out or 2, and then try and start Brian Wu to kind of, eat some innings here. And still give you a decent chance to stay in this ball game. But yeah, I don't think Dan had very many good options. He went with Brash while the game was still technically winnable, and, Brash fine, minus the 1 pitch that unfortunately led to another run. So it's just kind of one of those things. Dan, I have no problem criticizing Dan Wilson. You guys know this. But tonight, I don't really know what he's supposed to do. I think the bigger question is, Vargas in a 4-run game, but you had already used Spire. You'd already used Brash, and obviously Bizzardo's pitched a ton, and that's not a very likely winnable game. And they still used Bizzardo, and he gave up a run. Very rare for Bizzardo to do that, but so I don't know what Dan's supposed to do in that situation. I don't care if it's the playoffs. I don't care. If it's the regular season, but anytime, I don't care how many days off you have in between. Anytime your bullpen has to cover, 6+ innings, 3 nights in a row, this is kind of the result you can expect. And the Mariners don't have a bullpen that's deep enough to do that under the best of circumstances against the Rockies, let alone, a wagon like the Blue Jays. So I don't have a problem with him taking Luis out when he did. Again, it's a no-win situation there. Going to Brash was fine under the circumstances. Again, I guess you could say going to Vargas, but you've already used Brash, you've already used Spire. So do you want to use Bizzardo for 2 innings and possibly not have him tomorrow? Do you want to use Munoz for 2 innings when you're down by 4? Like, I don't know. And who's the next best guy after those 4? It's Vargas, unfortunately. And so, and I don't think Vargas was terrible tonight, but like it is what it is. So I don't really have a big problem with anything Dan did per se. I think he was just in a tough spot for the 3rd night in a row, and he's just kind of trying to manage this thing as best he can. And I don't think they gave him very many good options.
It's just this Blue Jays team is built so well to exploit your specific weaknesses, and we're just seeing that play out. Like, it's just as simple as that. Can you circumvent that? Absolutely. You did it in games 1 and games 2, but sometimes, they are going to get you. And tonight we've seen the absolute extreme of that, the last 2 games. So, I mean, I don't really blame Dan for what he did. Like, I think going to Spire in that situation makes all the sense of the world. I had he not done that and Castillo gives up a couple runs, I think we'd be, calling for Dan's head to, on the show, right? Like, so, it is what it is, right? Like, sometimes you make these decisions, you make very difficult decisions, you make very aggressive decisions, and they don't pay off. But that's kind of what the playoffs are. And I felt like
the job.
Yeah, and I feel like Dan, at the end of the day, handled that about as well as he could have. It's just his players didn't execute.
Right. You have half of your bullpen is guys you don't trust. And that's fine so long as your starters can give you 5 or 6 every single night. When they give you 3 or less 3 nights in a row, you have to use some of those guys you don't trust. You just have to. And, even when you don't use those guys that you don't trust, you're still using the guys you do trust, and they're pitching every single game. And even if they are somewhat well rested because of all the off days built in, these guys are still seeing them every single game. They're easier to pick up. You see the same pitcher throw 5 days in a row, you're going to pick up some stuff that you wouldn't notice in game 1. So, ultimately, I think, not to go back to this, but like, they didn't do enough in the bullpen at the deadline. And, we talked about it then. We've talked about it the entire time throughout. And you didn't give Dan kind of a foolproof bullpen. And Dan,
and the one guy that you did go out and get is kind of unusable right now.
I mean, like, look, Luke Jackson, Emerson Hancock, and Caleb Ferguson, they're the white flag guys, which means you have Vargas, who's kind of the in-between guy. And then you have your 4 studs who, burning them with a 4-run deficit, like, you can do it sometimes, but you can't do it in back-to-back nights, especially when, you have a guy going tomorrow, Bryce Miller. Who knows how long Bryce, he looked good in the playoffs so far. Don't get me wrong, but like, it's just one of those things. Like, Bryce is still battling through his own issues that he's battled through all year, and you have Brian Wu, who's never pitched out of the bullpen before. And you're kind of trying to figure out how to bring him into this equation. So there just aren't a lot of good options for Dan Wilson to go to outside of those 4 guys. And he used those 4 guys tonight, I would say, appropriately.
Yeah. And I have no interest in burning Wu in a game like this, even when it was 5-2, frankly, because I'm going to need Wu at some point in the series. And this was not the do or die game. Like, it would have been great to have it, but this is not the game to do that in. I might need Wu tomorrow. I might need Wu to start game 6 if I'm down 3-2. Like, so I don't really put any of the blame of this one on Dan, frankly. I think this is just on the guys for just getting out executed by the Blue Jays.
Right. And maybe if we were fast forwarded a year from now and it's like, well, you have Senja and Cade Anderson, and so you don't need to go out and get those guys at the bullpen to build an 8-man bullpen. But you weren't there. You were at a spot where you had a 4-man bullpen, and you chose not to add to it. And now you're kind of seeing why that's a problem. And also, obviously, Wu getting hurt is a big part of this, because I'm sure part of the plan was we'll put Bryce Miller in the bullpen, and he'll probably stuff will play up, and you can see why they thought that based on how Bryce has looked in the playoffs this year. So, but things happen. The Wu injury certainly has made an impact on how the Mariners pitching has gone, but also the Mariners pitching just hasn't executed, and the Blue Jays are making them pay for just about every mistake they make. So, we can search for excuses, and we could search for even explanations, but at the end of the day, it's very, very simple. It's the 26 guys in that clubhouse right now, the guys who put on the uniform and go out on the field every day. Yeah. They've gotten their butts kicked the last 2 nights. There is no further explanation needed. They've played terribly. The Blue Jays have played well. They've gotten blown out as a result. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one thing to just get straight up beat. It's another to also help that team out. Like, I don't think that the Mariners have lost these two games just because they've like shot themselves in the foot repeatedly.
No.
They certainly haven't helped things. I just think they're straight up getting smoked by a very, very good Blue Jays team.
Right.
And this was bound to happen. To me, it doesn't really say anything about the future of this series because, again, we've seen the Mariners work around this in games 1 and 2. It's a best on best. I mean, we are at the point in the year where, and sometimes a lot of the times, actually, it doesn't really work out like this, but this year specifically, the two best teams of the American League are playing one another.
Yep.
In the ALCS. And like, so the Blue Jays are just going to get theirs. That's just going to happen.
Yep.
So, it's just, you got to brush it off and you got to move on and you got to get back after it, in game 5. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. This episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. And with football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and a great way to follow along with football. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So game 5 between the Mariners and the Blue Jays tomorrow. M's trying to salvage one game at T-Mobile Park. They won't be able to clinch their first ever trip to the World Series if they're going to do that at T-Mobile Park. That's going to happen in Toronto now that they've lost these first 2 games at home. But still great opportunity right in front of the Mariners here because they won those first 2 games in Toronto. They're still only 2 wins away from making it to the World Series. And again, the Blue Jays are going to get theirs. You're going to get yours because you're the 2 best teams remaining in the American League. You're just 2 very good teams that do it in very different ways. And that's why maybe we've seen the extremes that we've seen so far in this series. But there's no time to dwell on what's happened these last 2 games. That's for like people like us to do, but for the players, you can't dwell on this. What you absolutely can't afford to do here is start to press. You were in a very similar position to this, last series where game 4, you had a great opportunity, a very convenient way to win that series and make a quick trip up to Toronto, and you got smoked. And you had to go back to Seattle and you had to face Scooble and you had to play 15 innings. You didn't know that at the time, but you had to overcome all of those obstacles in order to even get to this point, to even have the chance to, be 2 wins away from going to the World Series. And you did it because, after that game 4, what did we hear from the players? Hey, we're just on to game 5. Whatever happened. That's done now. Nothing we can do about it. We just have to focus on game 5 and getting the job done. And that's the same position that you're in now, where you missed out on a great, very easy opportunity to put this series to bed. You got smoked. You got punched in the mouth. And now it feels like the odds are against you because now you're going to have to go back to Toronto, and the Blue Jays rotation has been reset and they have all the momentum and they just scored 21 runs on 29 hits against you over the last 2 games, all of that. But you beat these guys twice. You can absolutely beat them again. Just, to use a very, cheesy cliche here, you literally just have to take it one game at a time right now. I'm getting in my Russell Wilson bag right now, but yeah.
Sure.
Like, but seriously, like that's how you have to approach this thing now. Is like the only game that matters is the next one.
Yeah. I mean, there's really not there's just really not an option but to do that. Like, so, to have that attitude, tomorrow's game is, tomorrow, and as we're recording this, at least tomorrow's game is pivotal, and it cannot be understated. I just looked it up. Since 1985, there have been 28 7-game series that have been tied after 4 games. The winner of game 5 has won 18 of those 28 series. So it's about a 2 out of 3 swing there. And the reasons why are obvious, right? You only need 1 win in the next 2 days, not 2. You kind of have the other team has to throw everything they've got, as Ty is losing a lung. The other team has to throw everything they've got in game 6, and do they have enough left over for game 7? So, like, well, it's not impossible to win back-to-back games to, go to the World Series. It is historically unlikely. Is this one of those teams that could buck the trend and lose game 5 and still win this series? Sure. Of course they can.
If any team would do it, it would probably be them.
Sure. Is it something you want to deal with? No, absolutely not. So tomorrow's game is absolutely pivotal. And it's just funny because, like, even if the Mariners win tomorrow's, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's great, but like, still 33% chance they lose this series. And if the Mariners lose tomorrow, I'm like, well, it's over. They only have a 33% chance to win the series. So, it's just life of a Mariners fan. Sometimes, hopefully these guys bounce back quicker than we do, but the last 2 days have been rough. There's no doubt about it. And now I assume you're going up against Gossman. I don't think Schneider's made an official announcement yet, but I assume you're going up against Gossman and you're countering him with Bryce. So it is a game 1 rematch. And we'll see what version of Bryce Miller we get. Do we get playoff Bryce Miller, who's been very, very good outside of the first inning in Toronto? Or do we get regular season Bryce Miller, who was terrible, and you're already going back to Toronto down 3-2 if you get that version? So, a lot riding on tomorrow's game. It's critically important. It's huge. It's huge. And I just hope that the good Mariners show up and at the very least get a competitive baseball game out of this thing. Like, you can't get blown out all 3 times, at home. Needing just 2 wins to go to the World Series. Like, it would just be a very sour way to end the season if you were to, lose this series after going up 2-0 and getting swept at home on the way to doing it. It would just be a tough pill to swallow, especially when the fans have, given you everything they've had over the last, month or so, and they want it more than any fan base out there. And it would stink to not be able to provide it for them. But, sometimes that's baseball, and that's just the way in the life of most fan bases, but especially so Mariner fans. So they'll bounce back. I have no doubt about that. The Mariners fans, that is. I don't know if the team can bounce back, but I don't like betting against them because it seems like every time I do, they turn it around. Then again, I never said they should sell at the deadline. So I have that going for me. At the very least.
Maybe I should say that again.
I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, Ty, and I said this after game 1 of the ALDS, there's no path forward for the Mariners to win this series.
All right. All right. And they should sell. It's what's best for the future of the organization.
By the way, we didn't talk about the lineup change that was made tonight.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird night for Rivas because he did draw a walk and then he got picked off. But he also had a couple balls that probably are hits against most other teams, but the Blue Jays are just really good defensive outfield in the outfield. So kind of a weird night for Rivas. He had one of the biggest boo-boos, but he also had some of the best at-bats. So we'll see if he's in there tomorrow. No Robles tonight. Canzone did get a hit, but God, he looks so terrible. So again, we'll see if Robles gets in the game tomorrow. I still think he probably has a little bit of a hip problem when he crashed into the wall the other day. So we'll see if he's in there against Gossman, but I think Rivas has probably earned another start, again, recognizing that he made probably the second biggest error of this game. But Josh Naylor went 3 for 3 and he made the biggest error of the game. So we're going to forgive him. So might as well forgive Rivas too. Roughly the same quality of player. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think this is Naylor's 5th 3-hit game in the last like 8.
Incredible. You have to re-sign him.
I mean, I don't think you have much of a choice, and I mean,
Yeah.
I know that they're not going to do it, and I know that it creates a lot of problems, but I don't know if you can go down with Randy Arozarena in the leadoff spot for much longer. But again, we talked about this. I really don't know if there's a better option, unfortunately. But we'll see if Dan makes any more changes. But I doubt it.
I think also making a bunch of changes kind of signifies you're panicking.
Maybe you should panic. Might be time to. This is the perfect time to panic. To quote Woody from Toy Story, this is the perfect time to panic.
Yeah. But no, I don't think
maybe after tomorrow is the perfect time to panic. But like, yeah, things aren't great right now, guys. There's no way for us to spend this, and like the best spin I can give you is that like, well, it's a best of 3 now, and if you win tomorrow, historically speaking, you have a 67% chance to win the series. But that's the best I can give you. Well,
yeah, the good vibes that you built in the first 2 games, they're pretty much gone because like, yeah, the Blue Jays return serve. They essentially did the same exact thing to you that you did to them.
Yeah.
Now they could do something even worse to you tomorrow if they want, but yeah, the spin is pretty simple here, right? Like those 2 games that you won in Toronto are still banked. You're still only 2 wins away from the World Series. And now you're in it, and you're going to play 2 of those games at a ballpark that you've been very good at.
Very good. Meanwhile, Park up until the last 2 days.
Well, this whole postseason, you haven't been particularly good there, offensively speaking. So maybe it's a good thing that they're going to be leaving T-Mobile Park here soon. The only wins you have at T-Mobile Park this postseason have both come against Tarek Skubal. That is the most Mariner stat in the history of Mariner stats. Yeah. But yeah, the spin is simple here. And look, you win tomorrow, like you feel pretty good about it because then you get 1 clear shot at it in game 6. And then, if it has to go to a game 7, which it probably will because this is the Mariners we're talking about. Even if they lose tomorrow, it's probably going to go to a game 7 because this is the Mariners we're talking about. Like they would absolutely put us in the most stressful possible position. And honestly, that would be, losing tomorrow and then winning game 6 somehow, like late in game 6, by the way. Going to extras in game 7. Yeah. And then going to extras in game 7. I'm not sure what's more Mariner, winning in extra innings in game 7 on like a wild pitch or something weird like that. Or like a pitch clock timer violation on Vladdy with the bases loaded and a 2-strike count, and that's how you advance or something weird like that. Would that be more Mariner, or would it be more Mariner for them to just get smoked the next 2 games and blow a 2-0 lead, being outscored like 48-4 in those 4 games? Not this Mariners team. Yeah. But most Mariner teams. Most Mariners teams, but not this Mariners. Well, most Mariners teams wouldn't get to this point. That's true. So we'll see. Yeah. I mean, like, again, I ride with them to the end, but there's no sugarcoating it. It's been a rough 48 hours. Yeah. I don't know. Something tells me that it's going to go the same way that the Detroit series went and how the season has gone, where it looks so over and then, oh my God, we're so back. But eventually that has to run out, right? Or does it? You would think. Or does it? That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Teddy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Teddy Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.